Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to an all-new Sermons in the Park. As always, I am your Reverend Jamie McCaskill. I want to take this time to thank you for being here again this beautiful Sunday. I know it's been a real rough time, and especially for those in Kentucky and Tennessee and all those areas that just dealt with the tornadoes. I know I've seen a lot of people have passed away due to those tornadoes, and I pray for the families of those who were in that, and also the people who lived through it. Pray that you guys find peace and healing. I know that it's going to be a tough time for you. So let's take this time to bow our heads and thank our Heavenly Father. Thank you, Father, for always being here for each and every one of us. Thank you for being you, God, because you're wonderful and loving and caring, and you take care of everyone. Father, I was just telling everyone, and I'm coming to you, Father. I pray that those people who lived through that tornado find peace, and for the families of those who passed, I pray that they find peace in knowing that their families their members have moved on to a better place. There's no more fighting, no more pain, no more tears. They're better. They're wherever they are. They're better off than where they were before. They're not in any pain. Father, I pray that those who are no longer have a home now, they find a home. They they get back on their feet. It's a tough time going through all that. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for your son Jesus, who came down here all those generations ago and gave us back that relationship with you. Gave us a way to forgive us of our sins, and we thank you for that, Father. Amen. So this week, we just finished off the book of Job. We're done with that. We learned a lot through the book of Job. We learned, how to deal with tribulations in our lives, and we learned how to be a better friend to our friends let me correct myself. We didn't learn how to be a better friend. We learned how to not be a good friend. Because we've seen those three friends who were horrible. They were horrible comforters for Job. So by watching them, we learned what not to do. Well, this week we're going to be starting our reading and review of the book of Judges, a book that has a very fitting title, in my opinion. The title Judges refers to these very unique leaders that God gave to his chosen people to preserve them against their enemies. Let us read a couple of verses here in Judges real quick. Let's go. Turn with me to Judges chapter 2. And we're going to be looking at verses 16, and we're going to be reading all the way to verse 19. Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges, which delivered them out of the hand of those that spoiled them. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a-whoring after other gods, bowed themselves unto them. They turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of the Lord, but they did not. And when the Lord raised them up judges, then the Lord was with the judge, and delivered them out of the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For it repented the Lord, because of the groanings by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, and they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, in following other gods to serve them and to bow down unto them. They ceased not from their own doings, nor from their stubborn ways. Essentially, once that judge was dead, they would just turn right back. Okay. Now the Hebrew word for judges actually it actually translates to deliverer or savior, as well as a judge. Like now knowing that, I want you to look again. So let's turn to Deuteronomy. And we're going to be looking at first off, we'll be looking at chapter 16, verse 18. Judges and officers shalt thou make thee in all thy gates, which the Lord thy God give thee, throughout thy tribes, and they shall judge the people with their judgment. Then we'll look at chapter 17, and we'll be looking at verse 9. And thou shalt come unto the priests, the Levites, and unto the judge that shall be in those days, and inquire, and they shall show thee the sentence of judgment. And then we'll look at chapter 19, verse 17. Then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges, which shall be in those days. Now, so the judge is not just a judge, like the legal sense, like we just read, but also he's a deliverer. He's what we see in the book of Judges is we see 12 of these judges. And they arise before, and they come out before. This all happens before Samuel. That means that Eli and Samuel bring that count to actually not 12 but 14. God himself is the highest of the judge, right? Let's look at another verse in Judges real quick. Let's look at Judges chapter 11, verse 27. Judges 11:27. Wherefore I have not sinned against thee, but thou dost. Let me read that again, I'm sorry. Wherefore I have not sinned against thee, but thou doest me wrong to war against me. The Lord, the judge, be judged this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. So he's talking about how the Lord is the judge. Now, did you know, I don't know if you knew this or not, the book of Judges actually spans about 350 years. It takes place between, that's 350 years between when Joshua had his conquest in about 1398 BC, I believe, all the way to Eli and Samuel, who judged prior to the monarchy in about 1043 BC, I believe. The book itself takes its name from these leaders, these judges, who guide the fortune of Israel from the death of Joshua all the way to the days of Samuel, who is, like I said, considered the last judge. These judges were men who were raised up by God, not only because of their, like I said, their military ability, but also because of their discernment, their spiritual discernment. Now, as far as who wrote the book of Judges, there is no definitive answer on that. We're not exactly 100% positive, because unlike other books, we don't have that written down anywhere. There's nowhere is it written down. Now, if you were to look into the Jewish Talmud, the Jews believe that it was written by Samuel, one of the prophets who lived during that time that these events took place, and he would have been able to sum it all up, right? Now let's look at something real quick. Let's look at 1 Samuel 10:25. It says, Then Samuel told the people the manner of the kingdom, and wrote it in book, and laid it up before the Lord. And Samuel sent all the people away, every man to his house. You see, that's why, like I said, the Talmud believes that it was him. And then verse 7, what does verse 7 tell us? Well, we're getting there. We know that it took place earlier than when David had captured Jerusalem. I mean, we know that much. And that was around 1004 BC. And we see that in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 6 and 7. It says, and the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, Except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither. Thinking David cannot come in hither. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same as the city of David. We can tell this because, like, of the Jebusites. They're still in control of that area right there. That's how we know that this takes place about 1004 BC. Now, let's go back to the book of Judges. Let's look at first Judges chapter 1, verse 21. And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, but the Jebusites dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto this day. So you see how it's mentioning that they're still there, but David drove them out. So it just kind of gives us a time period, right, about when that takes place. Also, we see Samuel write about the time before the kings in Judges 17:6. In those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Okay, then we have 18:1. In those days there was no king. And in those days the tribes of Danites sought them an inheritance to dwell in. For unto that day all their inheritance had not fallen unto them among the tribes of Israel. Now also look at chapter 21, verse 25. This is the last verse in the whole book. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Now, King Saul, he had started his reign in about 1043 BC. It is believed that it was not very long after this that the book of Judges was written. You know, this is all speculation, but anyway, getting into all that history, I could go on and on. You know this. But let's get back to the point. The author is unknown, like I said. But it is believed to be either Samuel or one of Samuel's disciples. But the integrity of the book of Judges is very trustworthy. Because of what we learn of before the Hebrew kings. Okay, just look at what we see. First, we see the Jebusites are mentioned as still occupying Jerusalem. We see that in, like I said, in chapter 1, verse 21. Then we see Gezer was not yet conquered in Judges chapter 1, verse 29. We'll look at that real quick. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. Okay. Then we see, and this was a feat that was not accomplished until the days of Solomon, actually. We see, if you go and you look in 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 16, you can see that that's when this was accomplished. Let's look. 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 16. For Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had gone up and taken Gezer and burnt it with fire, and slain the Canaanites that dwell in the city, and given it for a present unto his daughter, who was Solomon's wife. Okay. Then we see several portions of the book are linked closely to the days of Joshua. Look at Judges chapter 2. And we'll look at verses 6 all the way to verse 10. And when Joshua had let the people go, the children of Israel went every man into his inheritance to possess the land. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great works of the Lord that he did for Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died, being 110 years old. And they buried him in the borders of his inheritance in Timnath, in the mount of Ephraim, on the north side of the hill of Gash. And also all that generation were gathered into their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. Now, if you compare that, what we just read, to Judges chapter 1, verses 9 all the way to verse 13. And afterwards the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites that dwelt in the mountain in the south of the valley, and Judah went against the Canaanites and dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba, and they slew Shishai, and I'm sorry, but I'm horrible with these names, Ahiman and Talmai. And from thence he went against the inhabitants of Debir. And the name of Debir before was Kirjath Sepher. Okay, I'm reading a little bit further than I intended to, but we're going to keep going. And they slew Shishai. And Caleb said, He that smiteth Kirjath Sepher, and taketh it to him, will I give Achsah my daughter the wife. And Othniel the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him Achsah his daughter to wife. We're going to compare that, what we just read, to Joshua. We're going to, chapter 15, verses 13, all the way to 17. And unto Caleb, here we go, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, he gave a part among the children of Judah, according to the commandments of the Lord to Joshua, even the city of Arba, the father of Anak, which city is Hebron. And Caleb drove thence the 3 sons of Anak, Shishai, and Ahiman, and Talmai, the children of Anak. And he went up thence to the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir before was Kirjath Sepher. We just read about that, right? And Caleb said, He that smiteth Kirjath Sepher, and taketh it to him, will I give Achsah my daughter to wife. And Othniel the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, took it, and he gave him Achsah his daughter to wife. You see, it's exactly the same. Now, we're also going to do some more comparison here. We're going to look at Judges chapter 18. We're going to read verses 27 to 29. And they took the things which Micah had made, and the priest which he had, and came unto Laish, unto the people that were at quiet and secure, and they smote them with the edge of the sword, and burnt the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Zidon, and they had no business with any man, and it was in the valley of that lieth by Beth Rohab. And they built a city and dwelt therein. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their father, who was born unto Israel. Howbeit the name of the city was Laish at the first. Okay? Now we're going to compare that, what we just read, to Joshua chapter 19. We're going to read verse 47. And the coast of the children of Dan went out too little for them. Went out too little for them. Therefore the children of Dan went up to fight against Lashem, and took it, and smote it with the edge of the sword, and possessed it, and dwelt therein, and called Lashem Dan, after the name of their father. And lastly, the Phoenician city Sidon, which is not that far from Tyre, right? If you look on a map, you'll see it's not that far from Tyre. It is still the chief port of Phoenicia in Judges chapter 3, verse 3. You'll see that. Namely, 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites, that dwelt in the Mount Lebanon, from Baal Harmon unto the entering of Hamath. So, like I said, we can tell that the book was written before Israel's monarchy, but we can also tell by the way that it was written that it was by one author. You know, we have phrases like, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. And then we have another phrase like, and the land had rest. You know, then we have another phrase like, the Spirit of the Lord came upon them. And we also have, every man did that which was right in his own eyes. We see this over and over again. But then we get remarks like what we see in Judges 18:1. We're going to be doing this a lot today because this is just an introduction to the book, okay? In those days there was no king in Israel. In those days the tribe of the Danites sought them an inheritance to dwell in. For unto that day all their inheritance had not fallen unto them among the tribes of Israel. And then also let's look at chapter 19 verse 1. And it came to pass in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite sojourning on the side of Mount Ephraim, who took to him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. Okay, this seems to tell us that there had been some, revisions around the time of the monarchy. So let us also look at the historics, the historicity of the book of Judges. It actually covers like I told you earlier, 300-year span that stretches all the way from the death of Joshua. Like I said, it's believed to be around 1367 BC, and it lasts up until the time of Samuel, which is anywhere between 1064 and 1044 BC. It takes place during a time, the time of the judges, which took place in a time when the Syro-Phoenician formed a ground of contest between the expansion of two empires. You had the Hittites at the north, you had the Egyptians at the south. And you can probably easily guess, Israel's history in this period is linked to one person in particular, and that is the Egyptian pharaoh. In particular, the pharaohs of the 19th and the 20th dynasties. When there was a strong pharaoh on the throne, he would bring stability to the area of the coast, and Israel would enjoy a time of rest. And during their repeated apostasy, God would bring oppression on them. One of the most significant periods of no rest occurred after the mid-12th century BC. This reflected not only the unsettling nature for the time, the widespread upheaval of the Eastern Mediterranean, but it also reflected the growing spiritual and moral degeneracy of Israel. It shows us that anytime we're just one generation from a decline. That's what it really shows us this. Let's remember that the Exodus generation, they had rebelled against God at Kadesh, but they died in the wilderness. This new generation had been brought up to the plain of Moab. That's where Moses thought, Moses had taught them everything that he had. He then passed his mantle on to Joshua. The nation was poised to inherit the blessings that were promised to them by God. But then look what is recorded in Joshua chapter 2, verses 11 to 12. It says, "Then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and they followed other gods from among the gods of the people who were all around them, and they provoked the Lord to anger." You might be asking yourself, like I did, when writing all this, what happened? Well, in the space of just a few decades, the Israelites had neglected the doctrines of the transference. They were, we're all trained. We all train our children, right, in the ways of the Lord. That's one of the things that we're taught. Look at Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Don't forget, Moses had instructed the Israelites to teach their children. He said, teach them the story of their redemption, the miracles of the Lord, and the content of the covenant. We see that in Deuteronomy 6, 7, and 9. Chapter 6, verses 7 to 9. "Which have no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat." And did I write down the wrong? Yeah, I'm at the wrong one. I turned to the wrong one. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 7 to 9. "And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes, and thou shalt write them upon the posts of the house and on thy gates." Now don't forget, the history of Israel reveals God's love and provision. But you see, the circumstances that they were in at that time, they were living in the land that had been promised to them by their forefathers, right? But no one will remember it if they're not reminded of it. Will they? If they're not reminded, the faithfulness of the Lord will fade from the collective circumstance, from the collective consciousness, I should say. And as we see, this is actually what happened. The generations of Joshua and Caleb, they had served Yahweh, as did the generation of the elders who led after Joshua's death. Then, as Scripture tells us in Judges chapter 2, verses 7 to 10, it tells us another generation arose after them who did not know the Lord, nor the work which he had done for Israel. And this led to a series of sin. And we see that old cycle of sin, judgment, cries for help, deliverance. Every time the oppressions start, Israel repents. They cry out to the Lord. He's faithful. He rises up a judge, or if you wish to call them something else than a defender, who will defeat these oppressors and restores the peace. And then what happens? Well, they become tempted when they're enticed by these pagans, because they're their neighbors, right? They grow too strong. The enticements of the temptation grows too strong for them, And then the conviction of those, fading memories is so weak, and what happens? Well, they sin again, don't they? And that cycle starts over. It forms this downward spiral where the Israelites become more and more corrupt and more like the Canaanites. Do you know the worst part about all of this? The worst part about all of this? Well, when the people failed to teach and transfer that covenant, they failed to cleanse the Canaan. They didn't cleanse the country of all. The country Canaan. They didn't cleanse Canaan of these pagan tribes. The author of Judges, who, as I said, was probably Samuel, he actually declares this in the very first chapter, which we'll be discussing that next week. Over and over again, the tribes of Israel, they failed to drive out the inhabitants out of that whatever part of Canaan they're in. And remember, God had commanded them to cleanse it. Instead, what did they do? They used these people as forced labor. They forced them to do jobs for them. This leads the Israelites to worshiping these false gods of the Canaanites, subjecting themselves to the curses that they're warned about. They're actually warned about this. Look at Leviticus. Turn to Leviticus, and we're going to look at chapter 26. We're going to read verses 14 all the way to verse 45. This is like half of the book. We're going to read it anyway. But if ye will not hearken unto me, and will not do all of these commandments, and if ye shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgments, so that ye will not do all my commandments, but that ye break my covenant, I also will do this unto you. I will appoint over you terror, consumption, and the burning ag, that shall consume the eyes and cause sorrow of the heart. You shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. And I will set my face against you, and ye shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you. Ye shall flee when no one pursues you. And if ye will not yet for all this hearken unto me, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. And I will break the pride of your power. I will make your heaven as iron, and your earth as brass. Your strength shall be spent in vain, for your land shall not yield her increase, neither shall the trees of the land yield your fruit. And if ye walk contrary unto me, and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you, according to your sin. I will also send wild beasts among you, which shall rob you of your children, and destroy your cattle, and make you few in number, and your highways shall be desolate. And if ye will not be reformed by me, by these things, but will walk contrary unto me, then will I also walk contrary unto you, and will punish you yet 7 times for your sins. I will bring a sword upon you, that shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. And when ye are gathered together within the cities, I will send the pestilence among you, and ye shall be delivered into the hands of the enemy. And when I have broken the staff of your bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven, and they shall deliver you your bread again by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied. And if ye will not hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me, then I will walk contrary unto you, also in fury. And I, even I, will chastise you seven times for your sins. And ye shall eat flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters shall ye eat. And I will destroy your high places, and cut down your images, and cast your carcasses upon the carcasses of your idols, and my soul shall abhor you. I will make your cities waste, and bring your sanctuaries into desolation. I will not smell the savor of your sweet odors. I will bring the land into desolation. Your enemies will dwell therein, shall be astonished at it. I will scatter you among the heathens, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities shall be waste. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths. As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths, when ye dwelt upon it. And upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts in the land of their enemies, and the sound of the shaken leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as fleeing from a sword, and they shall fall when no one pursueth, and they shall fall one upon another, and it were before a sword, when none pursueth, and ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies, and ye shall perish among the heathen, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up. And they that left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemies' land, and also in the iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. If they shall confess their iniquities and the iniquity of their fathers, which they trespassed against me, and that also they have walked contrary unto me, and I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies, and then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they then accept of the punishment of their iniquities. Then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. The land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy her Sabbaths, while she lieth desolate without them, and they shall accept the punishment of the iniquity, because they despised my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statutes. And yet for all that, when they did the land of their enemies, I will cast them away, neither will I abhor them, to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them, for I am the Lord their God. But I will, for their sakes, remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the heathen. Then I might be their God. I am the Lord. Also, let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 28. We're going to be reading a lot here again. We're going to be reading verse 15 all the way to verse, if you would like to, you can read that later, but that's basically the same thing. It's just talking about the covenant and, the curse that they bring upon themselves. Instead, what did they do? What do we see in Judges chapter 17, verse 6? In those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right. Where? In their own eyes, right? Also look at chapter 21, verse 25. Again, it says they did what was right in their own eyes. They weren't following the covenant of God. They did what was right in their own eyes. So let's do some background. Let's look at some background here, okay? We're going so if you were to read the back of the book, you always get some kind of a blurb, right? Well, let me give you one of those for the book of Judges. The book of Judges is an action-packed account of the failure of the children of Israel to maintain, if you will, a high spiritual standards that were laid down by Moses and Joshua. How was that? You see, the Israelites not only failed to conquer the land of God, the land like God had told them to do, did they? But look right here what it says in chapter 2, verses 1 to 3 of Judges. It says, "And an angel of the Lord came upon Gilgal to Bochim and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt, and have brought you into the land which I swear unto your fathers. And I said, I shall never break my covenant with you, and ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of the land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be a thorn in your side, and their gods shall be a snare unto you. But also, look at verses 20 to 23. And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he said, because this people have transgressed my covenant, which I commanded their fathers, and have not hearkened unto my voice, I also will not henceforth drive out any from before them of the nations which Joshua left when he died, that through them I may prove Israel, whether they will keep the way of the Lord, to walk therein, as their fathers did keep it, or not. Therefore the Lord left those nations without driving them out hastily, neither delivered he them into the hands of Joshua. They also fall into idol worship, don't they? And they also start to practice other sinful acts as well. These things that they saw the Canaanites do. You know, we see that in Judges chapter 3, verse 7, if you look. The children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgat the Lord their God, and served Balaam and the groves. We'll be getting into that all here later. All of this disobedience, all of this apostasy, it just grows. It brings on a progressive moral degeneration. We see it repeatedly in the accounts of their oppression. Not only there, but also if you look in the historical appendixes as well, that are in the closing portions of the book, from chapter 17 all the way to verse 21. God is teaching the people, these people that he calls his people, he's teaching them that rest is available, and he's the one that gives it to them, but only to the ones who are obedient. The book of Judges is a very, very tragic sequel to the book of Joshua. Just think about the book of Joshua, okay? The people were obedient to God. They conquered the land. But here in Judges, they're being disobedient. They're idolatrous. They're quite often they're deviated. If you were to look at the opening of the book of Judges in chapter 1 all the way to chapter 3, I believe it's verse 6, you see a focus on the closing days of the book of Joshua. You see a review of Joshua's death in chapter 2. Look at chapter 2 verse, I believe it's verse 6 all the way to verse 9. When Joshua had let the people go, the children of Israel went every man unto his inheritance to possess the land. The people served the Lord all the days of Joshua, all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, they had all seen the great works of the Lord that he did for Israel. Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died, being 110 years old. They buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnah, in the mount of Ephraim, on the north side of the hill Gash. Now compare that to what we see in Joshua chapter 24, verses 28 to 31. So Joshua let the people depart, every man unto his inheritance. And it came to pass after these things, Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died, being 110 years old. They buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnath-serah, which is in the mount of Ephraim, on the north side of the hill of Gash. And Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua, all the days of the elders that overlived Joshua, and which had departed, had known the works of the Lord that he had done in Israel. We see 7 cycles of Israel. They drift away from the Lord. It started even before the death of Joshua, and then a full departure into this apostasy later. We see 5 basic reasons for these cycles of moral and spiritual decline. So we're going to look at some of them. The first one we see is disobedience and failing to drive out the Canaanites out of the land, okay? Because they were supposed to do that. Remember, the Lord told them to drive them out. He said in Judges chapter 1, verse 19, and the Lord was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron. That's Judges chapter 1, verse 19. Now in verse 21 it says, and the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem. The Jebusites dwelt with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto this day. Then we also have verse 35. But the Amorites would dwell in Mount Heres, in Aijalon, and in Shabim, yet the hand of the house of Joshua prevailed, so that they became tributaries. We also have idolatry mentioned. That's the second reason, and that's in chapter 2, verse 12. They forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them out of the land of Egypt, followed other gods, of the gods of the people that were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked the Lord to anger. Also, they intermarried. They married people who were not Israelites. It wasn't that they married people who were not Israelites. They married the Canaanites, okay, who were idolaters. And once you do something like that, you're welcoming that God into your home. We see this in chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. The children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, the Hittites, and the Amorites, and Perizzites, and Hivites, and Jebusites, and they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their gods. That's right. But they also, the fourth reason, they did not heed the judges. Look at chapter 2, verse 17. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a-whoring after other gods, bowed themselves unto them. They turned quickly out of the way of their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of the Lord, but they did not do so. Okay? Then what did they do? The fifth reason. They're turning away from God after the death of the judges, because you see, once these judges would drive their oppressors out, and they would stay with they would follow God in the ways of this judge until that judge died, and then they would go back to the way they were. Okay, look at chapter 2, verse 19. It says, and it came to pass, when the judge was dead, they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, and following other gods to serve them, and to bow down unto them. They ceased not from doing their own doings, nor from their stubborn ways. We also see, so we see those 5 reasons, right? But we also see a 4-part sequence, and it's repeated in this phase, if you will, of Israelite history. First thing they'll do is Israel will depart from God, right? They stop worshiping God. They start worshiping, these false gods and doing these sinful acts. They're not following God the way they should. The second, and then two, God will chastise them, right? He allows these oppressors to come in, defeat them in a military sense, and then put them under subjugation, right? And the third thing we'll see is Israel, under the weight of all this oppression, they will pray and they'll plead for their deliverance, right? They'll plead for it. And the fourth thing we'll see is God will raise up a judge. He will bring this person, either someone with either a civil or sometimes a military champion, who will lead in shaking off these oppressors, right? We see this here in the book of Judges. We see 14 judges come up. 6 of them are military judges. Okay, people like Othniel, I believe that's how you pronounce it, Ehud, Deborah, Gideon, Jephthah, and of course Samson. Two men of significance in spiritual leadership, right? We get Eli, who was a judge and a high priest, he's not a good example, right? But then of course we have Samuel, who was a judge, a priest, a prophet, and he's a good example. So some historical and theological themes that we see here in Judges, well, Judges is more of a thematic, it's more thematic than it is chronological, right? The most foremost of these is God's power and his covenant of mercy, right? And his gracious, how gracious he delivers Israel from the consequences of what they have done. It was their own failure. It was sinful. It was compromising. We're not supposed to compromise our faith. Look here at Judges chapter 2, verses 18 and 19. And when the Lord raised up the judge, then the Lord was and when the Lord raised them up judges, the Lord was with the judge, and delivered them out of the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For it repented the Lord because of their groanings by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. It came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, and followed other gods and served them, and to bow down unto them. They ceased not from doing their own things, nor from their stubborn ways. Also verse 21. I also will not henceforth drive out any from before them of the nation which Joshua left when he died. And then look at verse 25. I think I wrote down the wrong one here. I wrote down the wrong number. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, we see 7 periods of sin that go from sin to salvation, and God delivers his people compassionately, right? Through different areas of tribal inheritance, which he had given through Joshua. The apostasy actually covered the whole land. We can see this by the fact that each area is identified, right? We see the southern. We see that in Judges 3, verses 7 all the way to 31. Okay. We see the northern in Judges chapter 4, verses 1 to 5. From Judges chapter 4, verse 1, all the way to Judges chapter 5, verse 31. We see the central mentioned in Judges chapter 6, all the way to chapter 10, verse 5. The entire chapter 6, all the way to chapter 10, verse 5. Then we see the eastern in Judges chapter 10, verse 6. So that follows right after the central. Judges chapter 10, verse 6, all the way to chapter 12, verse 15. And then lastly, we see the western. We see that in Judges chapter 13, all the way to Judges chapter 16, verse 31. We will, of course, be getting into all of this when we review the book, okay? God's power to rescue his people faithfully shines against these dark backdrops of these pitiful human compromises. Sometimes the bizarre twists of sin, as in the final summary that we will see in chapter 17 and chapter 20, all the way to chapter 21. Allow me to read the final verse in Judges, which I feel sums up the account. Judges 21:25. In those days there was no king. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. One thing I want you to take when we're reading Judges is this. As a deliverance minister, one of the things that I've learned is that the devil tends to point out that we are not worthy of the Lord. We're not worthy to serve the Lord. I get this in my own life all the time, where I just feel like I'm not worthy of doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. You know, God does. If you read the book of Judges, you'll notice that none of those people are perfect. But yet the Lord uses them to do what his job is. Nobody in the Bible, David, Elijah, none of these prophets were perfect men. They all had their shortcomings. Each and every one of us has our shortcomings. That does not mean the Lord can't use us. He can, and he will. So, when we're reading over the book of Judges, just bear that in mind as we go along. Okay? So thank you for joining me here. I hope you return next week when we're going to be actually starting. We'll be starting with chapter 1 of the book of Judges, and we'll be doing our review. This is the book that was agreed upon between us. You know, when I asked what would you like me to do next, the book of Judges was mentioned, and that's what we're doing. I hope that you got something out of today's message. I pray that you continue to join me here. We'll be doing the entire book of Judges, so be prepared for that. So thank you. May God bless you and keep you, and I'll see you all here next week for an all-new Sermons in the Park.